Very little is known about the early life of Alysanna Targaryen, as she was the fifth-born child of King Aenys and Queen Alyssa. Lords and ladies at court found her of less interest than her older siblings, who stood higher in the line of succession. But what is known is Alysanna was bright but unremarkable, small but never sickly, with a sweet smile and a pleasing voice. To the relief of her parents, she didn't display the timid nature that had afflicted her elder sister Rhaena as a small child. Neither did she exhibit willful and stubborn temperament of Rhaena's daughter, Arya. As a princess of the royal household, Alysanna had servants and companions from an early age. Maesters would have taught her to read and write and do sums, and a sceptre would have instructed her in piety and the mysteries of the faith. Girls of common birth would have served as her maids, washing her clothes, and as she got older, she would have taken ladies of a like age and of noble blood as companions to ride and play with. Alysanna did not choose these companions for herself. They were selected by her mother, Queen Alyssa, and they came and went. Be sure that the princess didn't grow too fond of any of them. Her sister Rhaena had a habit of showering an unseemly amount of attention and affection on a succession of companions, many of whom were considered less than ideal, it being the source of much rumour at court, and the queen did not want Alysanna to be subject of similar rumours. All this changed when King Aenys died, and his brother Maegor returned from across the narrow sea to seize the throne. The new king had little love or trust for his brother's children, and he had his mother, the Dowager Queen Visenya, to enforce his will. Queen Alyssa's household knights and servants were dismissed, along with the servants and companions of her children. Jaehaerys and Alysanna were made wards of their great aunt, Dowager Queen Visenya. For all intents and purposes, they were hostages. They spent Maegor's reign being moved between Driftmark, Dragonstone, and King's Landing, until Visenya's death in 44 AC offered Queen Alyssa an opportunity to escape, fleeing Dragonstone with Jaehaerys, Alysanna, and the Valyrian Steelblade Dark Sister. Few accounts of Princess Alysanna's life after the escape exist, as she does not appear again in the history of Westeros until the final days of Maegor's reign, when her mother and Lord Rogar rode out of Storm's End at the head of an army. Was Alysanna, Jaehaerys, and Rhaena descended on King's Landing with their dragons? Undoubtedly, Princess Alysanna had handmaidens and companions in the days following Maegor's death, but nothing is known of them. We do know that none of them came with the princess when she and Jaehaerys fled to Dragonstone on their dragons, aside from the 7 knights of the Kingsguard and the castle garrison, cooks, stable hands, and other servants. The king and his bride were unattended on Dragonstone, for the most part. This was hardly proper for the new queen, and her mother argued that Alysanna must have her own household. Alyssa, in this, also saw a chance to undermine and maybe undo Jaehaerys and Alysanna's marriage. The Queen Regent would dispatch a carefully selected group of companions and servants to see to the young queen's need. The plan was Queen Alyssa's. It was one at the hand Lord Rogar Baratheon gladly agreed to, knowing he could twist it to his own means. Old Septon Oswyck, who had performed the wedding of Jaehaerys and Alysanna, kept the sept on Dragonstone, but a queen would require someone of her own gender to see to her religious instruction. Queen Alyssa sent 3, the formidable scepter Jezebel, and 2 well-born novices of Alysanna's own age, Lyra and Edith. To take charge of the serving girls and the maids of Alysanna's household, she dispatched Lady Lucinda Tully, the wife of the Lord of Riverrun, whose fierce piety was renowned. With her came her younger sister, Ella, of House Broom, Lord Cautergar's daughters. 3 other girls of noble birth made up the remainder of the company, 1 each from the Vow, the Stormlands, and the Reach. Janice of House Templeton, Corianne of House Wild, and Rosamond of House Bull. Queen Alyssa wanted her daughter attended by suitable companions of her own age and station, but that was not the sole motivation in sending these ladies to Dragonstone. Certain Jezebel, Edith, Lara, and the deeply pious Lady Lucinda and her sister had further charges. It was the hope by the Queen Regent that these fiercely righteous women might impress upon Alysanna, and maybe even Jaehaerys, that their marriage was a sin and an abomination in the eyes of the faith. It was hoped they would repent and see the error of their ways before the match became public. In contrast, Lord Rogar's motivations were baser and to the point. With the Dragonstone garrison and Kingsguard standing by the king, the Hand needed his own eyes in the castle. He made clear to Lady Lucinda and the others that all that Jaehaerys and Alysanna said and did were to be reported back to him. He was especially anxious to learn if and when the king and queen intended on consummating their marriage, that he stressed that it must be prevented. It is believed that Rogar sent Lady Corianne Wild with the party to Dragonstone, tasking her with seducing the young king and driving a wedge between him and Alysanna. If this was the case, and Rogar's intent, then it's fair to conclude Lady Corianne failed her task. As troublesome as the issue of the king's marriage was to Queen Alyssa and Lord Rogar, the crown's lack of coin was ever present. King Maegor's wars had been ruinously expensive, exhausting the royal treasury. To refill it, Maegor's master of coin had raised taxes and imposed new ones, but these measures brought in less gold than anticipated and only served to deepen animosity of the lords of the realm regarding the king. Nor had the situation improved with the ascension of Jaehaerys. The young prince's coronation and his mother's golden wedding had both been splendid affairs that had done much to win him the love of the lords and the small folk. but all of it had come at a cost, and even larger expenses loomed ahead. Lord Rogar was determined to complete work on the Dragon Pit before handing the city and the kingdom over to Jaehaerys, but the funds were lacking. Edward Celtigar, Lord of Claw Isle, had been an ineffectual hand for Maegor. Given a second chance under the regency, he had proved to be an equally ineffective master of coin. Unwilling to offend his fellow lords, Celtigar instead decided to impose new taxes on the small folk of King's Landing, who were conveniently close at hand. Port fees were tripled, certain goods were taxed into and out of the city, and new levies were asked of innkeeps and builders. None of these measures had the desired effect of filling up the treasury. Instead, building slowed to a halt, the inns emptied, trade declined as merchants diverted their ships from King's Landing to places like Driftmark, Duskendale and Maidenpool, where they might evade taxation. The new levies did, however, serve to make Lord Celtigar loathed throughout the city. Another casualty of this was the Dragon Pit. The Crown no longer had the funds to pay the builders, and all the work on the Great Dome ceased. To make matters worse, storms were gathering, both to the north and south. With Lord Rogar occupied in King's Landing, the Dornish had begun raiding more frequently into the marches, even troubling the Stormlands. There were also rumours of another Vulture King in the Red Mountains. Lord Rogar's brothers, Boris and Garin, insisted they did not have the men or money required to deal with him. Even more dire was the situation in the north. Brandon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, had died in 49 AC, not long after his return from the Golden Wedding. His son Walton had succeeded him when a sudden rebellion broke out in 50 AC among the men of the Night's Watch at two of the smaller castles. He gathered his strength and rode to the wall to join the loyal watchmen in putting them down. The rebels were former poor fellows and warrior sons who accepted clemency from the king, led by Sir Oliver Bracken and Sir Raymond Mallory, the two tan-cloaked knights who had served in Maegor's Kingsguard before abandoning him for Jaehaerys. The Lord Commander of the Watch had unwisely given Bracken and Mallory command of two crumbling forts, ordering them to restore them. Instead, the two men decided to make these castles their own seats and make themselves lords. Their uprising proved short-lived. For every man of the Night's Watch who had joined their rebellion, 10 remained true to their vow. Once joined by Lord Stark and his bannermen, the Black Brothers retook the castles and hung the Oathbreakers, save for Sir Oliver himself, who was beheaded by Lord Stark with the celebrated Valyrian steel sword, Ice. The remaining rebels fled beyond the wall in hopes of making common cause with the wildlings. Lord Walton pursued them, but 2 days north in the snows of the haunted forest, he and his men were set upon by giants. It was written afterwards that Walton slew 2 of them before he was dragged from his saddle and torn apart. His surviving men carried him back to Castle Black in pieces. As for Sir Raymond Mallory and the other deserters, the wildlings gave them a cold welcome. Rebels or not, the free folk had no use for crows, so Raymond's head was delivered to Eastwatch by the sea half a year later. Brandon Stark's second son, Alaric, became Lord of Winterfell. He had ruled the north for 23 years, an able man, though a stern one. For a long while he had no good to say of King Jaehaerys, as he blamed the king's clemency for his brother Walton's death, and was often heard to say that his grace had beheaded Maegor's men rather than sending them to the wall. Far removed from the troubles in the north, King Jaehaerys and Queen Alsyanna remained in their self-imposed exile from court on Dragonstone, but they were anything but idle. Jaehaerys continued his rigorous training regime with the Knights of the Kingsguard, and devoted his evenings to poring over accounts of the reign of his grandfather, Aegon the Conqueror. Many visited Dragonstone to talk with the king, some to sheepishly plead for the young king's forgiveness, which Jaehaerys was pleased to grant. Though Daemon Valerian, as the Crown's Lord Admiral and Master of Ships, was in King's Landing with the Regent, that did not prevent Jaehaerys and Alsyanna from flying their dragons to Driftmark and touring the shipyards, escorted by his sons. When word of these meetings reached Lord Rogar in King's Landing, he grew furious and went so far as to ask Lord Daemon if the Valerian fleet could be used to prevent lords from going to Dragonstone to curry favour with the boy king. Lord Valerian's reply was blunt and to the point, a simple no. The Hand took this as a further sign of disrespect. Meanwhile, Queen Alyssanna's new ladies-in-waiting and companions had settled in on Dragonstone, and it soon became apparent that her mother's hopes that these wise women might persuade the queen that her marriage was unwise had gone seriously wrong. Alysanna Targaryen's convictions that gods had meant for her to marry Jaehaerys could not be swayed. She believed and told her scepters regularly that Jaehaerys would be a great king and she will be a great queen. So firm was she in her belief, and so gentle and kind and loving to all. The scepters and the other wise women found that they could not condemn her, and with every passing day they moved more to her side. As we know, Rogar Baratheon's own plan to use Lady Corianne Wild to seduce the king had failed, and Lady Corianne disappeared portally to the Free Cities amidst great controversy and scandal. As the king's manhood drew nearer, the stage was set for the return of the king, but there still stood some big obstacles in claiming his crown. His stepfather, his hand, Lord Rogar Baratheon.